is designed to prevent anyone from coming into the aircraft internally. These are all the potential targets. It has been said by one vice president of one of the OEMs that it takes 4 million lines of code to swing the landing gear. But how many lines of code does it take to not swing the landing gear? Those are the questions. We have to make sure that code is secure. We have real challenges, but we have built the systems to prevent it. We have to maintain those systems. So the key to what we do is understanding what we do. We basically have to understand, look at the data, understand the data, analyze it, track it. We look at the different systems components, the security logs, the airplane health management information, to really understand what is happening on the vehicle. And what we have to do is build an infrastructure that supports the aircraft itself. Now, we're not creating out of thin air the architecture. There are organizations that support and guide us in our work. This is fundamentally a cybersecurity framework that has been outlined by NIST, the United States government, of the National Institute of Standards and Technology. It can be adapted. But we are dependent upon the guidance of the industry. Certainly the manufacturers of the aircraft have their own security handbooks, their guidance. We have the regulator organize intelligent decisions based on this type of analysis that has to go on, this assessment and discovery process. And so ultimately, we look at this framework. While it's built for the industry as a whole, it can be adapted easily, well, perhaps not easily, but focused on the aviation, the airline industry. And it could be for a drone, it could be for a spacecraft, it could be for an aircraft, for any vehicle. And this is a broader view of the information has been previously identified. This is a standard IT type approach, but allows you to build a tiered approach that matches your needs and infrastructure. But what we have to do is realize it's not just the airplane that we have to consider. It is actually the entire fleet. In days past, when something happened, it would happen to an event was an airplane. We are now in this distributed world with loadable software. A compromise could be not just an airplane, it could be the entire fleet. A knowledgeable person has the opportunity, unfortunately for us, to threaten the entire operation of a class of aircraft. Look at even ransomware. Look at, you don't have to make the ransomware, the compromise itself. You have to just have the threat of it with enough credible information to disrupt something, to make a CIO or CISO or VP, president of an airline, to make a difficult decision of how they operate and maintain that particular day. And so we look at what we do in aviation. Aviation is heavily dependent upon policy, process, and procedures. It's dependent upon the people that do this work. It's dependent upon the tools and the technology. But it isn't linear. It defines what we do, but it's all integrated. It all works and plays together. It is this process flow that we're most important, because it's a handoff. Multiple things are happening simultaneously. It's like the relay race where you pass a baton. Everybody does their job. Everybody has to pass the baton at the right time, at the right place. If you fumble or drop the baton, you're not going to win the race, and you become at risk. So these are the things we have to consider in a day-to-day operational perspective. And the key things here is the information supply chain when we talk about loadable software aircraft parts. Many of these parts, there are many parts, hundreds on an aircraft, many of them are updated on a regular basis. We have to understand that process, and we've seen in the last year supply chain challenges in the form of solar winds and other breaches that have occurred. They're happening more frequently. We're not even discovering them frequently. So we're looking at how we protect the information chain. And you look at the type of information we have to protect. It's the aircraft, it's the systems, it's the architecture. You know, we are trying to protect not just cybersecurity, but the privacy for in some cases, the passengers, the business activities that are going inside the airplane in the areas of private jets, and the loadable software and the aircraft parts. We have to look at all the components and the connectivity, gate link, wireless, all of which is part of the supply chain. It comes across to the internet, all of which has to be protected and maintained. Again, end to end, from the airplane, the connectivity to the airline, all of it is required. Now, we fundamentally, in order to be prepared for the best practice in operations, we have to consider the worst. And in that, we have to do certain things. We have to build a security incident event management program, knowing in detail how we will respond to certain situations, follow it rigidly and consistently. We look at every possible opportunity to prepare. Thank you very much. Every opportunity to maintain and support the airplane, to make sure we don't have to worry about an incident or an event. But if we do, we are prepared to quickly respond. Because in that, it is the response that's most important. One of the key things is not shoot from the hip. To understand what you're doing, you have to be agile, but you have to be prepared and careful. So again, knowledge, creativity, because you will, as much as you prepared, you will probably not see the details of this particular breach before. And so it's that supply chain that is critical end to end. So the security incident event management is a structure you have to build and define. You're working end to end, and you have to consider every point in the information chain, from the airline, the operations of the airport, the back end. All of these must be considered. You also need to consider your partners in this, because they too have a stake in what happens. The maintenance of the aircraft, whether at whatever level may be, is something that has to be considered, and they too must be cyber secure. Now, when we look at the design of the aircraft and the systems, understanding the vulnerabilities and conducting a penetration test is really critical, particularly in the certification. And again, it's how we partner with the OEMs in the design of the airplane, whether it be the aircraft itself or the avionics. We have to understand how they're built and tested, understand the vulnerabilities and how they might be attacked. We also, on operational aircraft, understand the vulnerabilities so we can protect against them. It's all end to end. We can't leave out a step. If you leave out a step, that's immediately the target someone's going to find. Their first The attacker, the first step is going to be looking for the easiest opportunity to get into the system. What I think we have to remember is simply you can't prevent an attack. You can only prepare for an attack. Now, and in that, the attacker only has to be lucky once, just once. You have to be successful every single time. You can prevent an attack only if you're prepared. And that's the key that we're talking about here. Preparing for what will ultimately have a situation that will happen. Everyone is at risk. So with that as the close, I'm not going to speak to any depth on air informatics. I'm available at the Washington booth, just a few steps away. If you wish to come and speak to me about this and your operation, please do. If there's any question, I'll be happy to answer those. And with that, I'll open the floor to questions. With that, I'll thank you and good day. Enjoy the show.